Hello, welcome to my channel. This is the third in a series, a four-part series around the Bigme 1051. And in this particular video, we're going to go into some visual demonstrations that highlight some pluses and minuses of the device. And then we'll culminate with battery tests. So why don't we go ahead and jump on in. As always, this is chaptered, so if you want to go ahead and jump ahead to an area of interest, feel free to do so, and I will see you at the end. Okay, so the 1051 is designed to work with a type cover. That is an additional expense for that, and I didn't purchase that. So instead, we're going to go ahead and take a look at what a Bluetooth mouse and a Bluetooth keyboard looks like in terms of performance on this device. So we're going to go ahead and do a couple things. The first thing is going to E-Ink Center. Make sure we're on extreme mode. That's the most responsive mode. Amenable to both typing and for the mouse. And then we're going to go ahead and connect our Bluetooth devices. Now I've already paired both the mouse as well as the keyboard, and we should be able to see that shortly. There we go. There's our keyboard mouse. So we can go ahead and click out. I'm just going to move this pointer up and down, and you can see it's fairly choppy. I don't think that the mouse experience is a great experience on this device. I don't think it's better than touch, but you are able to use it. The keyboard, however, is much better. Let's go ahead and click on this. We'll go ahead and start up a new document. And let's go ahead and just crank up that size of the font. Okay, hello there. Oops. Hello there, the keyboard is now connected. This is what it is like to type on extreme mode. Sorry for the typos, I have this on my lap, which isn't the most convenient place to have it. But you can see that the typing experience actually isn't too bad. On extreme mode, you can type and see the words, oh my goodness, come out in real time. So the typing experience actually is pretty good. And so connecting a Bluetooth keyboard is definitely something that you could consider doing if you're doing word processing. And this is presumably what it would be like if you had the keyboard folio. Of course, it would be attached to the device, but that's at least the experience of typing in action. So in the visual tour, I had mentioned that the native reader that comes on this device has the ability to read a number of formats, including CBR files. But as it turns out, that wasn't my actual experience as I tried a CBR file later on. I'm going to show you exactly what happened. So I'm going to go ahead and go into storage, and we'll look up documents. And you'll notice that I've got this All Hail Megatron comic book file. I've actually got it twice, but that's not important. I'm going to go ahead and click on this, and what will open is this particular screen. Now this is in Chinese. I've translated this. I don't remember exactly what they said. I think this is something about Alibaba and cloud. And I can't remember what this says, but it's, regardless, you're just stuck on this screen. There is no actual reader. So it's not clear to me, what I'm supposed to do in order to move past this particular screen. So it's an odd issue. I thought that in past versions, this is the reason why I said it in the visual tour video, I thought for sure in past versions I was able to see a CBR file in their native reader. Maybe I'm remembering that incorrectly, but clearly that's not the case here. So if you're side-loading comic book files, that looks like it's going to be a bit of a problem unless you have better luck than I have in figuring out how to get past this particular screen. However, you can read comic books just fine if you're using an app like Kobo or on Kindle, and in fact we'll have some examples in this video around using Kindle, and it looks pretty good, but in terms of side loading, it's a bit problematic at this time. So I'm going to do a demonstration now of global handwriting, and unfortunately the demonstration will show both a key strength and a key weakness of this device in the same demonstration. But let's just go ahead and go in, and we're going to click on global handwriting here, and then we get this toggle which will turn on. And again, there's 3 modes to global handwriting. Handwriting mode is basically a way of interacting with apps, particularly like OneNote as an example. So what you do is you write, then translate that into the app. Picture mode is just a way of taking a screenshot essentially and being able to write on that. But our attention will focus on this one in the middle called read mode. Go ahead and click on that. There we go. And we'll just show this in action. I'm going to go ahead and pick pencil. We'll pick red as our color and 3-point font. And now I'm going to go ahead and click outside this window, and this window comes up. Now this is where we run into the issue I alluded to just a few seconds ago. Now what we've got here is some instructions on how global handwriting works, and we'll just walk through that. But the thing I want you to note is that down below are the names of any notebooks associated with global handwriting, and the base one is known as default. Pretty straightforward. There's also the ability, however, to name your own notebook file. So you could name, for example, research, whatever you want. And you would do that by clicking on this button that you can barely see here that's obscured by the top of the menu bar. Now, as it turns out, this is not just an aesthetic problem, it's a functional problem as well, as I'm unable... Oh, here we go. So just the right spot, I can actually then create the notebook. So we'll go ahead and call this. But you can see this is a bit of a problem, and in previous sessions I wasn't able to get this to come up. So this is the type of glitch that doesn't happen all the time. I don't want to say it's frequently or anything like that, but it happens enough of the time that it makes working with the Bigme a frustrating experience when it should be much better than it is. Now I'm going to go ahead and say confirm. Another issue that I've had in past devices using global handwriting is if I create a title with a space, it simply won't work. You won't know it until you're done with the process, and you'll see there's no notebooks. That's another quirk of global handwriting. But we've only got one word here, no spaces, so we are good. So now you'll notice that we have both research and default, and I'm going to go ahead and pick that research file. Now, what we can do now is basically go into any application and start writing. In fact, here we are on the cover screen. So let's go ahead and start writing here. And actually, let's start writing here. I don't want to accidentally trip any of the gestures, so I'm going to go ahead and unclick that and go note number 1. I'm going to go ahead and save that by clicking on this down arrow. And it disappears, recording it into that notebook. Let's go ahead and go into an app. We'll go ahead and click touch, go into Kobo, launch the application. And don't want to learn about that. Go ahead and get into this book. Let's make our second note. Note number 2. Save that. There we go. And then let's go ahead and go back and touch. Let's get out of this. Let's go into the web browser. We'll make this our last example. And here we'll call this note number 3. So in summary, what we've done, and we'll go ahead and save that, is we've gone through, the system UI, we've gone through the Kobo app, and now this browser app, and written notes. And if we go into this little hamburger here, we'll click on that. That will take us actually into the notebook itself. And you see up here, we're on page 3 of 3. So if I scroll back, here's our second note on the second page, and here's our first note on the first page. So basically what this does essentially is it creates a scrapbook. And so, I can keep making notes and adding to it using global handwriting. And so it's a very powerful feature because there's really no limitation. Anything I see on the screen, I can write a note on and save it into this notebook. So a few quirks, as we saw earlier, both in terms of how you title these notebooks and also in terms of the fact that we've got that obscured button, which is an unfortunate glitch or bug, if you will. That's not great, but the functionality of global handwriting is actually quite powerful. Let me show you just one more thing. I'm going to go ahead and save this file. Now, if we weren't in global handwriting, and let's go ahead and turn that off, like so, then we can go into the Notes app, and you'll notice that there is this icon here. If I click on that icon, then I have two options. We're going to go to the Reading Mode Reading Notes option, and that's where you'll see that research notebook. And I do have additional editing I can do here. I can go ahead and do additional adds. I can add another layer. I can do the lasso tool to move things around, and so on. So you've got a little bit. It's not as sophisticated as the full notebook experience on this device, but it's pretty good and for what you get for it. So that is global handwriting. Okay, one of the things I did cover in the visual tour, but I wanted to revisit just to kind of illustrate the significance of it, is a couple of the tools that are featured in this kind of AI section. And what Bigme has done is they've matched what Boox has done on a couple particularly key features that I think are worth calling out. Now, first off, just notice that we have the system settings, so the bar is fully expanded on the side and on top, and that's pretty intrusive onto the canvas. So what we can do, of course, is we can collapse those so that they barely take up any of the canvas at all. So now I have pretty much the entire writing surface to work with. But the potential annoyance with this is if I wanted to use the lasso tool or I wanted to delete something, then I would have to expand these menus in order to do that. So these tools basically allow you to be able to do a couple of those functions without having to expand the tool, which is kind of nice. So for example, we have strike through erase. So where we see the word test, I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of it like that. So it's a really convenient way to basically get rid of text without having to go through the menus. In a similar fashion with the lasso tool, there's a couple ways to do it on this particular device. One way is to circle something multiple times, which I find a bit cumbersome and not always reliable. But a little more reliable, and I think a lot better, is if you draw a rectangle, like so, it will then assume that it is part of the lasso tool and all the functionality comes up. So I can, take this and move it around the screen like so. I could of course delete it, or I could convert it to text. And if I wanted to copy and paste, I can do that there as well. So again, here's a way I can go into the lasso tool without having to actually go through the menu. So I think it's pretty nice. I have found in my experience that the rectangle doesn't always work. It seems to work most of the time, but it's not quite as reliable as Boox's implementation, where they just circle something once and it gets captured. Boox really did an amazing job on that. This isn't quite there, but it's close, and I think Bigme gets some credit for having implemented these tools. Okay, so we're going to look at how comics perform between the Note Air 4C, which is here on the left, and the 1051 here on the right. And we're going to do this in a couple ways. I should point out that we're using the Kindle app. I really like the cell by cell for comics, so we're going to use that application. And we're going to do this in a couple different modes. So we're going to start off, for example, in Regal mode, and all other settings are going to be on their defaults, and that's going to be the same case here, which is also on Regal mode as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at the performance then. And I'm tapping these both at the same time. Seeing a little bit more ghosting on the right, but there's ghosting with the Boox device as well. Just a little more obvious on the 1051. Colors seem just a little bit darker, a little more vivid on the 4C. Okay, let's go ahead then and change the settings to more of a performance setting. So we're going to go ultra fast here. And then on the Bigme device, we're going to move toward extreme. And we'll see how these will refresh the screens on both. And let's see how they perform. Ghosting's a lot better in both devices in extreme mode. I'm actually seeing a little more ghosting in this case on the Boox device. You can see a lot of ghosting over here, for example, where the image looks much better. Over here, let's keep going. Again, you see more striking ghosting there. And over here it's there, but it's definitely more muted. Let's just do a few more taps. Generally nice performance on both devices. But I like the ghosting on the 1051 using the highest refresh mode. Here you see a bit of ghost, about the same ghosting on both screens. You can see the little words from the previous page. Still seeing slightly darker colors on the Note Air 4C, slightly lighter on the 1051, but the 1051 handling ghosting better in this particular mode. The text is a little darker. You can see that here, and these bubbles, just a little bit more bolder text than there is over here. And again, there's other settings we can play with, but I just wanted to compare the two default modes. Let's go ahead and go in and see if we can increase the contrast. There we go. Okay, and so now the text is a lot closer. Oops. There we go. So yeah, you can see the text looks pretty similar. Actually looks a little bit better here now. But again, I could also tweak over here on the Boox device and darken that as well. You do see a little bit better color here on the Boox device. For example, you'll notice where this robot's standing, there's this little kind of little red area right here, and it's a smoother color here. I'm assuming that this color is closer to the actual source document, although I don't have that source document to validate that. So you certainly see differences between the two, but generally speaking, pretty similar performance and visual quality between the two. Not exact, but definitely in the same ballpark with each other. Okay, and that's our sample of performance with comics on the Kindle app. All right, so now we're going to compare the performance of the Kobo app, and we'll start on HD mode on both devices. Here we've got the Boox device on the left, and we've got the Bigme device on the right. Let me just go ahead and refresh each page, and then let's go ahead and compare how these devices turn pages. The settings are similar, by the way, within the app, not exact, and they are displayed slightly differently, so it's kind of impossible to get it exactly right, but these are approximately the same selected fonts and size of text. It just can't quite calibrate them to be perfect, but the focus here really is just on the performance. Let's go ahead and look at that. Again, we're on HD mode, which will have the crispest text. And we can see that the Boox device is turning at a slightly faster rate, but they are very similar to each other. Just a slight delay on the 1051. And okay, let's go ahead then and switch to the extreme mode. So again, favoring performance above the quality. But with text, it's not always as noticeable. So we'll get a sense. We're going to go ultra fast here. And we'll refresh both screens and see how these perform. We're obviously out of sync now. We're on different pages, but the general performance still applies. And both are quite snappy and very little ghosting. You see a little bit of ghosting going on, but it's pretty muted. So excellent performance in terms of page turns on both devices. Yeah, so pretty similar in these modes. Again, we're in extreme and ultra fast. When we were on a more high definition mode, the Boox device was a little bit quicker, but both devices handle reading fairly well, which is what you would hope for on an e-ink device. Okay, now we're going to do a comparison of how videos look on the two devices. And for the Boox device, we're going to go ahead and use the ultra fast mode, which you can see there is best for playing videos. And on the Bigme device, there's a preset which goes to their extreme mode, which of course is their equivalent of ultra fast. So both modes basically are using a high refresh mode. Lastly, we're going to go ahead and we'll just keep our volume at the midpoint on each device, and we will play them one at a time to get a sense of the performance. Let's go ahead and start with the Boox device.
You watch more NBA than probably Adam Silver does, so you are the perfect person to talk to about this. You also, I know you don't write anymore, but you have a lot of inside sources.
Okay, and let's go ahead then and take a look at...
You watch more NBA than probably Adam Silver does, so you are the perfect person to talk to about this. You also, I know you don't write anymore, but you have a lot of inside sources that talk to you about...
Okay, so you got a little sense of motion there, and obviously a sense of the audios as well. You know, again, video, or I should say, video is not necessarily the best use case for e-ink devices, but it is extraordinary how far e-ink has come, and the fact that you can play videos, which has been true for the last couple of years. In terms of performance, these two devices are very similar. I kind of liked the coloring a little bit better on the 1051, but that was just kind of a general impression I had. The audio sounded fine on both. The speakers are nothing to write home about. They're both certainly serviceable, and I would argue that that's the overall experience of watching videos. It's kind of a serviceable experience. It's definitely doable, but it's not a preference if you really wanted to watch a video with any type of quality. But both devices seem to handle videos generally the same, some small differences between the two. I thought we'd close out with a little bit of a performance test of how the two devices handle PDFs in their native reader. And as you can see, we're here in the e-ink center. There's basically kind of a default settings to the app, so we'll just leave that as that. And on the Bigme device, I went ahead and put it on normal to try to create a good balance between performance and ghosting. And I just want to do page turns here and a little bit of pinch and zoom as well. So let's just go ahead and turn a few pages. Okay, similar performance in these modes, a little bit faster on the 1051, but not a dramatic difference between the two, and we might be able to make some adjustments here. Let's go ahead and see how pinch and zoom works. I'll start with the Bigme. I'll kind of zoom in on these dates here. Okay, a little choppy, it's hard to kind of zoom in. Let's see the same on the Boox device. Okay, a much smoother experience of zooming in and out. Here, very choppy. It only zooms so much. So definitely a significant difference in performance, and the Boox device clearly is the better in this particular instance. Okay, so now to get into the results of the battery test that I conducted on the Bigme B1051C, you'll notice that that device is highlighted in green in the top row, and then all the other 10 or 11-inch devices that I've tested are listed below that. I've highlighted the Boox Note Air 4C because it's of particular interest as a competitor to the 1051, and that's highlighted in gray below. Both of those devices have a 3700 milliampere per hour battery, so very similar. So interesting to see if they produce similar results. Our first category is standby time with the screen off, and this is basically like a sleep mode where if you press the power button, the device activates in just a few seconds and is ready to use. So the amount of drain that you experience on the 1051 came up to about 0.12%, which put that, kind of in the mid-range, perhaps a bit slightly higher than the average. If we go over to standby with the screen on, this is when the device has the screen on. You can interact with it at any time by touching or writing on it. And that is 0.6%, which again was a little bit slightly worse than the average, most devices being able to do about 0.4% in this category. The next test we checked was the Wi-Fi drain, and this is Wi-Fi just having it on. There's no active downloading going on during this test, just what is the drain by having that toggled to on, and for the 1051, it was 1.4%. If we shift our focus then to front lighting, in full cold front lighting, and I use full cold because I generally find that cold and warm lighting drain at roughly the same rate, so I just stick to full cold to keep the tests consistent between devices. So at the full lighting on the device, we see about a 5% drain on this, lower than the Boox Note Air 4C, but a reminder that the 4C is one of the brightest devices that I've ever seen, so it stands to reason that the battery drain for the 4C will be greater than the 1051, which isn't as bright at its full setting. Half lighting is a way of getting good front lighting, but significantly reducing the amount of battery drain. You don't have to crank these devices all the way to the top to get the benefit of front lighting. So we measure it at the halfway point, and for the 1051, that was 1.9%. Again, a fairly reasonable score. Actually, these scores are generally better than the average, and certainly better than the Note Air 4C, which of course is brighter. Finally, we have reading and writing as tests. The reading test is normally on Kobo if available, and that certainly was the case here. And in this particular instance, there was a 1.6% battery drain. Again, slightly better than the average, but certainly not a record-setting rate. And then finally, the continuous note-taking. This is an exercise where I start the clock, I write continuously for at least 10 minutes, and then I keep checking every 30 seconds until the battery counter drops an additional percentage, and that's how I measure that. So it's a very arduous test, even though it's a short test, to measure how much just writing and taking notes drains the battery. And the answer for the 1051 is a pretty notable 7.7%, which is better than the Note Air 4C and is also generally better than the average. So a postscript note to the battery test results. There was 2 occasions where the device kind of unusually drained at a fairly rapid rate, multiple percentage points per hour, and it's not clear why that occurred. There were no tasks running. I was in between tests when that happened, and I had to reboot the device each time. Again, only those 2 times, but that was kind of strange. Hopefully, turning on some of the autosave features, particularly the one that goes into an auto sleep mode, would solve for that if that issue were to reoccur. Or maybe it was just a freak thing and it won't happen again, but I thought I would at least note it. Okay, so having said all that, this wraps up the third video of the series, and there's nothing left but the final review. And I think this video does a good job of setting the stage for that video. In that video, I'm going to go over all the pros and cons of the device, and I'll make my final determination of whether I recommend it or not, and if so, in what particular use case. So hopefully I'll see you there. Until then, have a great day.